First Contact Protocol. The void between stars had belonged to the hegemony for 5 centuries. Their massive dreadnoughts moved through space like ancient gods, each vessel a testament to technological supremacy that had never been challenged. Fleet Commander Zarthik stood in the command center of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, watching the star charts update with another successful conquest. His crystalline exoskeleton gleamed under the ship's bioluminescent lighting as his 4 arms manipulated the holographic displays with practiced efficiency. The Eternal Dominion stretched nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern, its living hull pulsing with organic energy conduits that powered weapons capable of cracking planets. The ship wasn't just built, it was grown, cultivated in the orbital biofoundries of the hegemony homeworld. Every surface was alive, responding to the crew's thoughts through neural interfaces that had been perfected over millennia. Zarthik's primary consciousness interfaced directly with the ship's neural network, feeling the pulse of 1,000 different systems. Sensor arrays extending like metallic tentacles detected the quantum signatures of distant worlds. Weapon clusters lay dormant but ready, each one containing enough destructive power to sterilize a continent. The bridge crew, all members of various species that had long ago submitted to hegemony rule, worked in perfect harmony with their living ship. The hegemony's expansion had followed the same pattern for 500 years. Their scout fleets would identify primitive civilizations, usually species that had barely achieved faster than light travel. A single dreadnought would arrive, demonstrate its overwhelming superiority, and demand immediate submission. Most species surrendered after witnessing a display of hegemony firepower. Those foolish enough to resist were eliminated swiftly and efficiently. Today's target was particularly unremarkable. Intelligence reports described a species called humans who had only recently begun exploring beyond their home system. Their ships used primitive chemical propulsion and basic fusion reactors. Their weapons relied on kinetic projectiles and simple energy beams. By hegemony standards, they were barely above Stone Age technology. Navigation Officer Krelak, a 6-limbed insectoid whose species had joined the hegemony 3 centuries ago, chittered softly as new data flowed across her biodisplay. Commander, we are approaching the target system. Long-range sensors detect a single human vessel conducting what appears to be a survey mission near the 4th planet. Zarthik's compound eyes focused on the tactical display. The human ship appeared as a small blip against the vast emptiness of space. It was pathetically tiny compared to the Eternal Dominion, roughly the size of one of their shuttlecraft. The vessel's energy signature was so weak it barely registered on their sensors. Specifications on the human vessel? Zarthik inquired, his voice carrying the harmonic undertones that marked him as a member of the hegemony's ruling caste. Tactical Specialist Vogen, a reptilian creature whose scales shifted color with his emotional state, accessed the ships. Analysis, protocols, length approximately 400 meters, mass roughly 50,000 tons. Primitive titanium steel, composite hull with basic energy shielding. Nuclear fusion reactor provides minimal power output. Armament appears to be limited to kinetic weapons and low-yield energy projectors. The bridge crew exchanged the equivalent of amused glances. This would be another routine subjugation. The human ship was so primitive that destroying it would be like using a Starkiller missile to eliminate a flying insect. Meanwhile, aboard the UES Indomitable, Captain Alina Rodriguez was reviewing mineral survey data from Kepler-4 for 2D when her sensor officer's voice cut through the bridge's quiet efficiency. Captain, I'm picking up a massive energy signature approaching our position. Range approximately 2 million kilometers and closing. Rodriguez looked up from her datapad, her dark eyes immediately focused. At 38 she was young for a deep space command, but her record during the colonial wars had earned her the respect of both her crew and United Earth Command. Define massive, Lieutenant Chen. Sensor Officer David Chen's hands flew over his console, his face growing pale. As the readings updated, "Ma'am, the contact is enormous. Initial estimates suggest a length of at least 1,500 meters. Energy output is off the charts. Our computers are having trouble processing the data." The bridge of the Indomitable fell silent, except for the steady hum of the ship's systems. Rodriguez felt the familiar tightness in her chest that came before combat. This was humanity's furthest venture into deep space, and they had just encountered something that dwarfed their most ambitious engineering projects. Chief Engineer Maria Santos spoke up from her station. "Captain, whatever that thing is, it's using technology we don't understand. The energy patterns don't match any known propulsion or power generation methods." Rodriguez stood from her command chair, her mind already shifting into tactical mode. The Indomitable wasn't a warship in the traditional sense, but like all Earth deep space vessels, it carried enough firepower to defend itself. "All hands. This is the captain. We are potentially about to make first contact with an alien civilization. All personnel report to stations and prepare for unknown contact protocols." The crew moved with practiced efficiency. Despite the fear that rippled through the ship, every person aboard knew their job. They were explorers and scientists, but they were also representatives of humanity in the vast darkness between stars. As the Eternal Dominion came within visual range, Rodriguez felt her breath catch in her throat. The alien vessel was beautiful, in a terrifying way. Its organic curves and pulsing lights made it look more like a living creature than a constructed ship. It was clearly the product of a civilization far more advanced than humanity. Zarthik opened a communication channel, his ship's translation systems automatically converting his words into the primitive human language. "Vessel of the species, known as humans, you are now in territory claimed by the Hegemony Concordat. I am Fleet Commander Zarthik of the Eternal Dominion. Your species will immediately cease all expansion beyond your home system and submit to hegemony authority. You have 60 seconds to acknowledge your surrender." On the Indomitable's bridge, the alien message sent shockwaves through the crew. Communications Officer Lisa Park looked up from her station with wide eyes. "Captain, they're demanding our surrender." The translation seems accurate, but the syntax suggests extreme arrogance. Rodriguez studied the massive alien ship on her main screen. By any rational measure, resistance was pointless. The alien vessel outmassed them by at least 30 to 1 and clearly possessed technology centuries ahead of Earth's capabilities. Any sane commander would attempt to negotiate or retreat, but Alina Rodriguez hadn't gotten command of humanity's most advanced exploration vessel by being cautious. She had earned it by being the kind of person who charged machine gun nests during the colonial wars and somehow lived to tell about it. "Open a channel," she ordered. Park's hands trembled slightly as she established the connection. "Channel open." Captain Rodriguez's voice was calm and steady as she responded to the alien ultimatum. "Fleet Commander Zarthik, this is Captain Alina Rodriguez of the United Earth ship Indomitable. We appreciate your introduction to galactic politics, but humanity doesn't recognize your authority over our activities in space. We're conducting a peaceful scientific survey and we have every right to be here." The silence that followed seemed to stretch across the void itself. Aboard the Eternal Dominion, Zarthik stared at his communication display in genuine confusion. In 5 centuries of expansion, no primitive species had ever refused the initial surrender demand. "Did they just reject our authority?" asked Vergen, his scales shifting to patterns that indicated extreme bewilderment. Krelak's antennae twitched nervously. "Commander, perhaps their translation systems are malfunctioning. Surely they cannot understand the technological gap between our vessels." Zarthik's tactical mind began analyzing this unprecedented situation. The human response suggested either complete ignorance of their situation or something else entirely. He decided to provide a demonstration that would clarify matters. "Charge the primary biocannon to 10% power," he ordered. "Fire a warning shot across their bow. Perhaps a display of our capabilities will help them understand their position." The Eternal Dominion's main weapon began to charge, organic conduits throughout the ship glowing brighter as massive amounts of energy built up in the biomechanical focusing chambers. When the weapon fired, it created a beam of pure, destructive force that could have vaporized a small moon. The energy blast passed just ahead of the Indomitable, close enough that the ship's sensors were temporarily overloaded by the intense radiation. When the displays cleared, Chief Engineer Santos looked up from her damaged control board with a grim expression. "Captain, that energy beam contained more power than our entire reactor could produce in 6 months. If it had hit us directly, there wouldn't have been enough left to scatter." Rodriguez felt the fear ripple through her bridge crew. The alien demonstration had worked exactly as intended, showing the humans just how outmatched they were. But instead of making her want to surrender, it made her angry. Throughout human history, when faced with impossible odds, humanity had a tendency to do something unexpected. Sometimes it was tactical brilliance, sometimes it was technological innovation, sometimes it was simply the refusal to give up when any rational being would surrender. "All hands, battle stations," Rodriguez announced calmly. "Engineering, give me everything the reactor can produce. Weapons, I want our railguns charged and ready. Helm, prepare for evasive maneuvers." The transformation of the Indomitable from survey vessel to warship took less than 2 minutes. Emergency lighting bathed the corridors in red as the crew secured for combat. In the weapons bay, Gunner Chief Robert Kim began final preparations on the ship's main armament. The Indomitable carried 4 electromagnetic railguns, weapons that used magnetic fields to accelerate tungsten projectiles to incredible velocities. They were primitive compared to energy weapons, but they had one advantage that the aliens couldn't understand: they were completely unpredictable too. Sensors designed to detect energy signatures. Rodriguez opened another communication channel. "Commander Zarthik, thank you for the demonstration. Now let me show you something about humans. We don't surrender. We don't retreat. And we sure as hell don't recognize the authority of bullies who threaten peaceful explorers." What happened next would be discussed in alien military academies for generations to come. The tiny human ship, faced with impossible odds, did something that no hegemony strategist had ever considered in 5 centuries of expansion. It attacked the Indomitable's first rail. Gun salvo caught the Eternal Dominion completely unprepared. The hegemony's energy-based defensive systems were designed to intercept and deflect energy weapons. They had no protocols for dealing with solid projectiles traveling at 12% of light speed. The tungsten rounds punched through the organic hull like bullets through flesh. Each impact sent shockwaves through the massive alien ship as kinetic energy converted to heat and destruction. Damage control systems that had never been tested against physical projectiles struggled to respond to hull breaches that couldn't be sealed with energy fields. Zarthik felt the impacts through his neural interface with the ship. For the first time in his career, he experienced something that no hegemony commander had felt in living memory: surprise in combat. "Status report," he demanded, his harmonic voice rising to frequencies that indicated extreme stress. "Damage control." Officer Leshtar, a fungoid creature whose body naturally interfaced with the ship's biosystems, reported through cascading spore clouds that changed color with each data point. "Commander, we have 17 hull breaches on decks 40 through 47. The projectiles appear to be solid matter, not energy. Our defensive systems were not designed for this type of attack." The bridge crew of the Eternal Dominion stared at their displays in shock. Their mighty dreadnought, which had faced the combined fleets of dozens of species without taking significant damage, had just been hurt by a single primitive vessel. Verganess scales had shifted to deep purple, indicating a mix of fear and confusion. "Commander, how is this possible? Their technology is centuries behind ours." Zarthik began to realize that the hegemony's expansion had created a blind spot in their tactical thinking. For so long, they had faced only species that used similar energy-based technologies. They had never encountered a civilization that still relied on kinetic weapons because no one had ever needed to, aboard the Indomitable. Rodriguez watched the results of their first salvo with grim satisfaction. "Damage assessment, Mr. Kim." Voice came over the com from the weapons bay. "Direct hits, Captain. Their hull appears to be some kind of organic material. Our tungsten rounds punched right through whatever defensive systems they're using." Santos looked up from her engineering station with amazement in her voice. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy fluctuations from their ship. It's like they don't know how to handle physical damage to their hull." Rodriguez allowed herself a small smile. Humanity's apparent technological disadvantage might actually be an advantage. The aliens had grown accustomed to fighting enemies who used the same types of weapons they did. Humans were throwing rocks in a world of laser beams, and sometimes rocks were exactly what you needed. The second salvo from the Indomitable targeted what appeared to be sensor arrays along the Eternal Dominion's hull. The alien ship's organic construction meant that damaging one section could affect systems throughout the vessel. Unlike human ships, where each system was isolated and independently maintained, Zarthik felt his ship's pain through the neural interface as more projectiles found their marks. The sensation was unlike anything in his experience. Energy weapon hits caused immediate damage that could be analyzed and countered. These kinetic impacts created cascading failures that spread through the ship's bioneural networks like an infection. "Return fire," he ordered, his compound eyes blazing with the first anger he had felt in decades. "All weapons target the human vessel. Eliminate them immediately." The Eternal Dominion's weapon arrays came alive with destructive energy that could crack asteroids, but the Indomitable was no longer where the targeting systems expected it to be. Rodriguez had ordered a full evasive pattern, using the ship's superior maneuverability to avoid the massive energy beams that lit up space. Around them, the human ship danced between the alien weapons fire like a fighter jet evading surface-to-air missiles. Its smaller size and more responsive engines allowed it to change direction faster than the hegemony's targeting computers could compensate. "They're too fast," reported tactical specialist Virgin, his scales now a sickly yellow color that indicated complete bewilderment. "Commander, their ship is moving in patterns that don't match any known tactical doctrine. It's almost like they're improvising their entire strategy." And that was exactly what Rodriguez was doing. Human military doctrine had always emphasized adaptability and innovation in combat, while the aliens fought according to established patterns developed over centuries. The humans were writing new rules as the battle progressed. The third rail gun salvo from the Indomitable targeted what appeared to be the alien ship's main power conduits. The tungsten rounds severed organic connections that carried energy throughout the massive vessel, causing entire sections to lose power. For Zarthik, this was a revelation that shattered 5 centuries of hegemony military doctrine. These primitive humans weren't just refusing to surrender, they were actually winning. As emergency alerts cascaded through the Eternal Dominion's systems, the fleet commander made a decision that would have been unthinkable an hour earlier. He opened a priority channel to Hegemony High Command. "This is Fleet Commander Zarthik requesting immediate reinforcement. Target species displaying unexpected capabilities require additional vessels for successful subjugation." The message would take 6 hours to reach Hegemony space and another 12 hours for reinforcements to arrive. For the first time in his career, Zarthik found himself wondering if 18 hours would be enough time to survive an encounter with a species they had dismissed as primitive. Aboard the Indomitable, Rodriguez studied the tactical display as her crew continued their impossible fight. They had proven that human determination and ingenuity could hurt even the most advanced alien technology. But she knew this was just the beginning. If they survived this encounter, word would spread. Throughout whatever galactic community existed, humanity would never again have the luxury of being underestimated. The real test was yet to come. The human element 13 hours after Fleet Commander Zarthik's call for reinforcements. The fabric of space itself seemed to tear open as 5 more hegemony dreadnoughts dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Each vessel was a masterpiece of biomechanical engineering, their organic hulls pulsing with the same deadly beauty that had first struck fear into the crew of the Indomitable. Supreme Commander Veltar, the hegemony's most decorated military leader, stood in the command center of the lead vessel, the Inevitable Conquest, studying the tactical situation that had required his personal attention. Veltar was old, even by hegemony standards, his crystalline exoskeleton bearing the scars of a dozen campaigns that had brought entire star systems under their control. His forearms moved with the fluid precision of someone who had spent 3 centuries perfecting the art of warfare. Unlike Zarthik, who was merely a fleet commander, Veltar held the rank of Supreme Commander and had never failed to complete a subjugation mission. The tactical display showed something that challenged everything Veltar understood about primitive species. The human ship was still operational, still fighting, after 18 hours of continuous combat with one of the hegemony's finest dreadnoughts. The Eternal Dominion bore dozens of scars from kinetic impacts, its organic hull struggling to heal wounds that conventional energy weapons would never have been able to inflict. "Report," Veltar commanded, his harmonic voice carrying overtones of barely controlled irritation. Combat Analyst Thurgan, a multi-limbed creature whose species specialized in tactical assessment, gestured toward the holographic display with 3 of his appendages, while the 4th operated his biointerface controls. "Supreme Commander, the human vessel has demonstrated capabilities that exceed our intelligence projections by several orders of magnitude. They have successfully evaded 847 direct targeting attempts while scoring 23 successful hits on the Eternal Dominion. Velta's compound eyes focused on the small human ship that continued to dart between the massive alien weapons like an insect avoiding swatting hands. Explain how a primitive vessel with chemical propulsion can outmaneuver our biomechanical targeting systems. Analysis suggests they are not following any recognizable tactical pattern, Thurgan replied, his coloration shifting to indicate confusion. Their movements appear to be completely random, yet somehow coordinated. It's as if they're creating their combat doctrine in real time. This was exactly what Captain Rodriguez had been doing. While the hegemony fought according to tactical principles refined over millennia, the humans were improvising everything. Rodriguez had thrown out the United Earth Navy manual and was conducting the battle based on pure instinct and her crew's remarkable ability to adapt aboard the Indomitable. The past 18 hours had transformed the ship's crew from scientists and explorers into something the galaxy had never seen before. Human warriors pushed beyond their limits, yet refusing to break. The ship itself bore the scars of near misses from alien energy weapons. Hull plates were buckled and blackened. Several secondary systems had been knocked offline, and the crew was surviving on emergency rations and stimulants. But they were still fighting. Chief Engineer Maria Santos had performed miracles, keeping the ship operational. She had rerouted power systems in ways that violated every safety protocol, overcharged the engines beyond their design specifications, and somehow kept the railguns firing despite ammunition stores that should have been exhausted hours ago. Captain Santos reported from the engine room, her voice hoarse from shouting orders over the sound of overworked machinery. I've got maybe 4 more hours before the reactor starts showing critical stress fractures. We're running on fumes. And determination down here. Rodriguez acknowledged the report while simultaneously ordering another evasive maneuver that sent the ship spinning away from an energy beam that could have vaporized a city block. Understood, Chief. How's our ammunition situation? Gunner, Chief Robert Kim's response came through the intercom from the weapons bay. We're down to our last magazine, Captain. 43 rounds of tungsten left. After that, we'll be throwing harsh language at them. The appearance of 5 additional alien warships should have been the moment when Rodriguez finally accepted the inevitable and attempted to negotiate. Any rational military commander would have recognized that the situation had moved from impossible to utterly hopeless. Instead, Rodriguez did something that would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for generations to come. She smiled. All hands. This is the captain, she announced over the ship's communication system. I know you're all looking at the tactical display and seeing 6 ships that each outgun us by 30 to 1. I know you're thinking about your families, back on Earth and wondering if we'll ever see them again. But I want you to remember something. We've been fighting one of these things for 18 hours, and we're still here. That makes us the toughest humans in the galaxy, and I couldn't be more proud to serve with each and every one of you. The effect on the crew was immediate. Fatigued eyes brightened with renewed determination. Hands that had been shaking with exhaustion steadied as they returned to their stations. Throughout human history, there had always been moments when ordinary people became extraordinary, not because they stopped being afraid, but because they decided their cause was more important than their fear. Supreme Commander Veltar watched this display of primitive stubbornness with growing incredulity open a communication channel to the human vessel. I will end this foolishness with words, if possible. The transmission that reached the Indomitable carried the full authority of the hegemony's supreme military command. Human vessel, This is Supreme Commander Veltar of the Hegemony Concordat. You have displayed remarkable tenacity, but your situation is now hopeless. Surrender immediately, and I will guarantee the survival of your crew. Continue this pointless resistance, and I will be forced to demonstrate why the Hegemony has never failed to complete a subjugation mission. Rodriguez listened to the alien ultimatum while studying the tactical display. 6 massive ships arranged in a perfect formation, each one capable of destroying her vessel with a single shot. The smart play was surrender. The rational play was negotiation. The human play was something else entirely. Supreme Commander Veltar Rodriguez replied, her voice carrying across space with the quiet confidence of someone who had already made her choice. Thank you for the offer, but I'm afraid we're going to have to decline. You see, surrender isn't really in our nature. We'd rather go down fighting than live on our knees. What happened next became known throughout hegemony space as the human moment, a tactical maneuver so unexpected that it redefined how the galaxy's most advanced military force thought about warfare. Instead of attempting to flee or fight all 6 ships simultaneously, Rodriguez ordered the Indomitable to charge directly at the center of the alien formation. The human ship accelerated beyond its design limits, its engines glowing white-hot as every erg of power was converted into forward momentum. What are they doing? Veltar demanded, his harmonic voice rising to frequencies that indicated genuine alarm. Combat analyst Thurgan worked frantically at his biointerface, trying to comprehend the human tactical choice. Supreme Commander, they appear to be attempting to ram the inevitable conquest, but at their current mass and velocity, such an impact would destroy their own vessel as well. For a being who had spent 3 centuries studying warfare, this human behavior was completely inexplicable. Suicide attacks were known among primitive species, but they were typically used as weapons of desperation by those who had nothing left to lose. These humans had been offered survival in exchange for surrender, yet they seemed to be choosing mutual destruction instead. But Rodriguez wasn't planning a suicide attack. As the Indomitable closed the distance to the alien formation, she suddenly ordered a full reverse thrust combined with a spinning maneuver that brought all 4 railguns to bear on the Supreme Commander's flagship simultaneously. Point blank range. The tungsten projectiles punched through the inevitable Conquest's biomechanical hull like bullets through paper. The kinetic energy, concentrated over such a small area, caused catastrophic structural damage that sent shockwaves throughout the massive alien vessel. Veltar felt his ship's agony through the neural interface as critical systems failed in cascading sequences. For the first time in 3 centuries of warfare, he experienced something that no hegemony commander was supposed to feel: fear. The human ship didn't stop there. Using the momentum from their attack run, Rodriguez ordered another maneuver that defied every principle of space combat doctrine. The Indomitable dove beneath the alien formation, using the massive ships themselves as cover while targeting their vulnerable engine sections with precision railgun strikes. The hegemony ships found themselves in the unprecedented position of being unable to fire on their targets without risking damage to their own vessels. Their formation, which had been designed to provide overlapping fields of fire, suddenly became a liability as the human ship turned their own size against them. Chief Engineer Santos pushed the Indomitable's systems beyond anything the designers had ever imagined. The ship's hull groaned under stresses that should have torn it apart, but somehow held together through a combination of human engineering and sheer determination. Hull integrity at 40% and falling, she reported. To Rodriguez, I don't know how much more punishment we can take. Rodriguez acknowledged the report while orchestrating another impossible maneuver that sent the Indomitable weaving between the alien ships like a fighter pilot threading a needle. Kim, ammunition status. 17 rounds left, Captain, but I've got an idea that might make them count. The idea that Gunner Chief Kim proposed was so simple it was brilliant. Instead of firing single tungsten rounds, they would fire all remaining ammunition simultaneously, creating a concentrated barrage that would overwhelm whatever defensive systems the aliens might deploy. The final salvo from the Indomitable lit up space like a miniature star as 17 tungsten projectiles streaked toward the Supreme Commander's flagship. The concentrated kinetic energy struck the Inevitable Conquest's command section, causing damage so severe that the ship's bioneural networks began shutting down non-essential systems to prevent complete structural collapse. Veltar found himself in the unthinkable position of ordering a retreat. All vessels, withdraw to safe distance. I repeat, all vessels, withdraw. The sight of 6 massive alien warships backing away from a single human vessel sent shockwaves throughout the hegemony fleet. In 3 centuries of expansion, no Supreme Commander had ever ordered a tactical withdrawal from a primitive species. Aboard the Indomitable, the crew stared at their displays in exhausted amazement. They had done something impossible. They had fought 6 of the galaxy's most advanced warships and not only survived, but forced them to retreat. Rodriguez slumped in her command chair, the adrenaline that had sustained her through 20 hours of continuous combat finally beginning to fade. Damage report. The reports that came in from throughout the ship painted a picture of a vessel that was barely holding together. Hull breaches, power failures, life support systems operating at minimum capacity, and weapon systems that were completely exhausted. By every rational measure, the Indomitable should have been destroyed hours ago, but it wasn't destroyed. It was still there, still defiant, still human. Supreme Commander Veltar opened a final communication channel to the human ship. When he spoke, his harmonic voice carried overtones that hadn't been heard in hegemony communications for centuries. Respect. Captain Rodriguez, in 300 years of military service, I have never encountered a species with your remarkable combination of tactical innovation and stubborn determination. The Hegemony Concordat hereby grants humanity full recognition. As a sovereign species, your space will remain under human control, and we will establish formal diplomatic relations at your convenience. Rodriguez's response was simple and quintessentially human. Thank you, Supreme Commander. We look forward to the conversation. As the alien ships withdrew and the Indomitable began the long journey back to Earth, Rodriguez realized that this encounter had changed more than just humanity's place in the galaxy. It had proven that advanced technology wasn't everything. Sometimes, the most primitive weapon was the human spirit's refusal to give up. The galaxy would never be the same, and neither would humanity. In the depths of space, a small, battered, human ship limped homeward, carrying news that would transform Earth's understanding of its place in the universe. They had met the galaxy's greatest military power and earned its respect not through superior technology, but through something uniquely human: the absolute refusal to surrender in the face of impossible odds. The age of human expansion into the galaxy had begun not with conquest, but with the simple declaration that humanity would bow to no one. The stars themselves would remember this day, when a species that had barely learned to travel between worlds taught the galaxy's greatest empire the meaning of the word indomitable.